Rise like lions after slumber, in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, that in sleep have fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few.
So, Jeremy Corbyn, it is wonderful to be able to see you again. The last time we saw each other was in Paris during the Climate Summit.
During the Climate Summit, it was a wet, stormy night, but what a wonderful meeting we had and what wonderful people.
It's been extraordinary being in the UK this week and seeing the political space that you have opened up, and the fact that now we're seeing the Tories try to poach some of your policies and scramble to try to appeal to young people.
Well, social justice isn't copyrighted, it's okay.
Yeah. I want to talk about this extraordinary moment we're in, where this project that really began under Thatcher in this country and Reagan in the US, the whole so-called consensus that never really was a consensus, the war on the collective is crumbling. It's also kind of a dangerous moment, right, when you have a vacuum of ideology, because dangerous ideas are also surging. So what is the plan to make sure that it is progressive, hopeful ideas that enter into this vacuum?
I think there's a confidence developing, particularly amongst young people, that they can do something and the future belongs to them, and also amongst older people that actually the certainties that a system of real welfare and welfare security brings is something worth fighting for.
Labour will boost the wages of 5.7 million people earning less than the living wage to £10 an hour by 2020. Labour will scrap tuition fees, and that will lift the debt cloud from hundreds of thousands of young people.
We've just come out of a general election campaign in which we started in a very difficult political position and ended up gaining 3 million more votes than 2015 and the highest Labour vote in England for many, many decades. And so there was a big swing to Labour, but not quite enough, unfortunately, to give us a parliamentary majority. And so we're now in a situation where there is a huge confidence amongst those that are campaigning for ending the wage cap in the public sector, for investment in public services, huge confidence there, and a huge degree of uncertainty by the right and by the Conservatives.
I feel like what your campaign has done is proved that when you put the ideas forward, when you put the bold vision of the world we actually want, not just the opposition to austerity, not just the no, but also a picture of the world that could be so much better than we have, that's when people get excited.
Indeed, the strongest message in the election campaign, and I said this at many, many rallies and events we held, I said, look around the crowd, look at each other. You're all different. You're all unique, you're all individuals. You have different backgrounds, languages, different ethnic communities, but you're all united. You're united in what you actually want in the sense of a collective in society. And I think the election campaign was a turning point away from the supreme individualism of the right towards the idea that you're a better society when you have a collective good about it.
And what about that picture of the world after we win? How important is that?
The picture of the world is a crucial one. It is about what we do to deal with issues of injustice, inequality and poverty, and above all, hope and opportunity for young people. Hope they can get to college or university, opportunity they can get a decent job, well paid. It's also about the contribution we make to the rest of the world and the relationship we have with the rest of the world. I want a foreign policy based on human rights, based on respect for international law, recognising the causes of the refugee flows, the causes of the injustice around the world. Indeed, there were some awful events during the election campaign. Before the election started, there was an attack on Westminster itself, on Parliament. There was then the dreadful bomb in Manchester, and then there was an attack in London on London Bridge.
And you committed kind of political heresy because you talked about some of the root causes, but yet that resonated with people.
I'm not in any way minimizing the horror of what happened or the awful things the individuals did, but I said you've got to look at the international context in which there's been this growth. And I can hear myself like yesterday, on February the 15th, 2003.
Thousands more deaths in Iraq will not make things right. It will set off a spiral of conflict, of hate, of misery, of desperation that will fuel the wars, the conflict, the terrorism, the depression, and the misery of future generations.
It's important for Americans in this moment to understand that you were able to say that and that it resonated with people because they know it to be true. Because we don't know what's going to happen during the Trump administration. But we do know that Donald Trump fully intends to take advantage of any crisis to push forward this incredibly regressive, xenophobic agenda, because he tried to exploit the Manchester attacks to say this is about immigrants flowing across our borders. He tried to take advantage of the London Bridge attack to say this is why we need the Muslim ban.
In the direct aftermath of the attack, the president tweeted, quote, "We need to be smart, vigilant, and tough. We need the courts to give us back our rights. We need the travel ban as an extra level of safety."
And he also attacked the mayor of London, who's the first Muslim elected to mayoral office anywhere in Western Europe. And people were extremely angry at the language he used towards Sadiq Khan.
What do you say to some of the world leaders who think that they can only go so far in standing up to Trump? You know, like maybe they'll put out a sassy meme of some kind, but ultimately they're going to welcome him with open arms. What do you think the stance of other world leaders who claim to stand for progressive values should be in this moment?
Well, I think you've got to meet Trump and discuss with him, as one would with any leader. I was shocked by the language he used during his election campaign about women, about Muslims, about Mexicans, about other people in society. I was also appalled at the language he used surrounding Paris climate change discussions. I mean, these are serious global issues.
Yeah.
What kind of world are we going to leave in the future, and what are we doing to this planet? And he seemed to think this was an opportunity for promoting polluting industries.
Well, he actually said he was going to negotiate a better deal.
Well, I'm not sure what he means by a better deal, and that would be interesting discussion. But having worked like you have for a very long time on these issues, the fact that finally India and China, in a formal setting, came on board with the idea there are limits to emissions, there are limits to pollution. For then the USA, having come on board under Obama, then walks away under Trump, is beyond sad.
But certainly because they're going so rogue on climate, I think there is a responsibility for everybody else to do more in this moment, not to just sort of, okay, he's lowered the bar so much that everybody looks good in comparison. And we are seeing examples of that. We're seeing, including in the US, we're seeing cities stepping up and saying, well, we're going to speed up our transition to renewables. And internationally, I think we need to see the same thing as well.
I mean, I think the image of the USA is too often presented as the image of what Donald Trump has said day to day, whereas the reality, look at the number of jobs in renewables in California alone runs into the hundreds of thousands. Look at the growth of renewable energy systems across the USA, the number of states and cities that are serious about protecting their environment and controlling what they can of climate change.
I want to talk a little bit about the way some of my friends in the United States are feeling right now, who were very inspired by this election campaign and by your leadership bid within the Labor Party. I have to tell you that people are feeling a little discouraged right now in the United States. They are up against Trump, but they're also up against a Democratic Party that is fighting them on single-payer health care, on universal public health care, that seems to want to keep charting this what they see as a safe centrist path, but what we're seeing again and again is it's not safe because it's a losing path. It's not speaking to people's urgent needs for good jobs, for free public education and affordable health care. What do you say to the people who organized for Bernie and are just feeling really frustrated right now?
Bernie called me the day after our election here. I was half asleep watching something on television, and Bernie comes on to say, well done on the campaign. And I was interested in your campaigning ideas. Where did you get them from? And I said, well, you actually. And what I would say to people is, look, don't be discouraged. At the end of the day, human beings want to do things together. They want to do things collectively. And that's the kind of society we are trying to create. we went into an election campaign in a difficult political position. And we put forward a manifesto that was collective in its approach, was specific in what it would do, in the sense of ending university tuition fees, in the sense of raising minimum income. And we gained the biggest increase in votes for our party since the Second World War. And we gained the support and participation of a very large number of people. We didn't win the election. I wished we had. But in that campaign, we changed the debate in exactly the same way Senator Bernie Sanders' intervention into the Democratic nomination did mobilize a very large number of people. Now, the last person in the USA...
But you did win the leadership of the Labour Party. That campaign wasn't ultimately successful within the Democratic Party. Do you think people should keep fighting for the soul of that party?
Well, it's the soul of the people, isn't it? And it's not for me to tell people what specific organizations they should or shouldn't have in the USA, because the party system in the USA is very different to here. What we've done is change the terms of debate. But the other key point, and this is what works on both sides of the Atlantic, is the methods of campaigning. Yeah, you knock on doors and you identify voters. That's key, crucial. But if you're seen solely through the prism of media that is quite right-wing and quite conservative in its views, then all you're doing when you knock on the door is hearing an echo of what people have heard on a right-wing television station or through the printed media. Social media and the technology and techniques that are there through social media give an opportunity that's never been there before to get that message across. Just think, those people that were campaigning for social justice in Chicago in the 1920s, the best they could do was print their own newspaper if they could afford it, or psycho-style a leaflet and take it round and hand it out on bread queues. I grew up in the era when you used to print your own leaflets and go and give them out. You can now send out something on social media and you can reach potentially millions of people in 5 minutes. The opportunities are there, and it's not regulated, it's not censored, it's not controlled.
It seems to me that you have received just about as bad media treatment, smears from elite media, as is possible to receive.
Really?
Yet it didn't work. I mean, in fact, it seems to have backlashed and just contributed to this feeling of loss of faith in many of these institutions.
Yeah, I think there's something in there. After a while, a high degree of media abuse makes you a figure of interest.
You talk about changing the debate, and that's clearly happened. And you know, one of the places we've seen this is in the Grenfell Tower catastrophe, crime scene. And the way in which this horrific event has been interpreted, it seems, throughout British society is as extreme evidence of a failed system that does not value human life, that puts a kind of a hierarchy on life.
What it exposed was something about modern urban living. This is the borough in London that is the richest in the whole country. Very, very rich borough. And its council gave a rebate to the top taxpayers last year. Gave them a little gift.
Money back.
That tower had several hundred people living in it, some of whom were tenants of the local council, Royal Borough of Kensington, Chelsea. Some flats had been bought independently and they were subtenanted or sub-subtenanted. Nobody really knew who was in the block. The whole system collapsed. The building went up in smoke, and the result was a catastrophe and the deaths of a very large number of people. We probably will never know the total number that died there. The reality was, it's a product of insufficient regulation, of deregulation, and it was a towering inferno of the poor being burnt in the richest borough in the country. And that's a wake-up call about safety of buildings. It's a wake-up call about the idea you go forward to this wonderful free market Valhalla of the future by tearing up every regulation like it's a denial of the opportunities for the private sector. And so the debate has turned full circle on this. I went there following day and spent quite a lot of time talking to those that had escaped from the tower and talking to traumatized firefighters and paramedics and ambulance workers and police officers who were getting ready to go into the building. It was then cooling from the fire, in order to bring out the bodies. They're the people who are the real heroes in this.
There's a wall now, I think you've probably seen it, where residents have put up questions that they have for the authorities. And these questions are just completely heartbreaking. There's, kids asking, is my school safe? There's one question from a 10-year-old who said, why does it take this to bring us together? And
That's a good question.
And I think we learn this lesson again and again during times of crisis. When we're tested, we can either turn inward and against each other, and we saw a lot of that after 9/11 in the United States, where Muslims were scapegoated, and we lost a lot of liberties in this country and around the world with these draconian laws pushed through. Wars were started in the name of that attack.
Now, surely the response to racism, the response to poverty, the response to deregulation is about the strength of the community and the collective. So if a lesson comes out of Grenfell, it's got to be that.
I want to ask you if there's been a moment that really sticks with you during the campaign or since, that is the most hopeful moment you've seen, where you could see the country that you want to live in, a glimpse of it.
A gentleman came to our rally in Hastings, which is South Coast seaside resort fishing town. He was aged 91. I joked with him because I'd been told he was 92, and he said, how dare I call him 92? He was only 91. And he joined the Labour Party in 1945, been a party member ever since then, very active all his life, and he said this was the most hopeful time of his life. And he told me his mother had been a suffragette who campaigned for the women's right to vote at the time of the First World War, and his grandfather had been in the Chartists in the 1850s, which helped to bring about some degree of democracy in Britain. And I just thought, this man has come out to a rally on a Saturday morning at that age because he's full of hope for young people. We were characterized as an election campaign that was full of young idealistic people. Yeah, there were a lot of young people there, and many of them with brilliant ideals and brilliant imagination. There were also a lot of older people there who came there saying, I want something better for my grandchildren. I want something better for society in the future. It was a coming together of large numbers of people.
Well, I really want to thank you for your leadership and for your boldness in doing that, because it isn't only inspiring people in this country. I think it's inspiring people around the world who really do need some inspiration right now, particularly in the United States.
Can I say thank you very much, but it's not about you or I as individuals. When people's minds are opened up, there is no end to the possibilities.